Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Tuckahoe's Historic Preservation Commission meeting. I would like to officially call to order tonight's meeting of September 26th, 2024. If I could ask everyone to please stand, and together we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. And for our roll call this evening, if I could ask
Greg Luisi, present.
Jenny Steinhagen.
Ladislao Castellanos.
Peggy Bellis.
Thank you. And Member Abrams, unfortunately, is not here tonight, but will be joining us at the next meeting. Tonight, we have 3 items on the agenda in order. That includes a presentation on 65 Main Street, also known as Village Hall, Tuckahoe's Village Hall. That will be followed by the opening of a public meeting to discuss 65 Main Street. And then we will have a brief presentation on the National Register of Historic Places. So in that order, let us begin with agenda item number 1, which is our presentation on 65 Main Street, also known as Tuckahoe Village Hall. So we have a couple slides, mostly pictures here, because not only do they tell 1,000 words, they allow us to pause in the present to recognize this historic building, and then also to travel back into the past a bit to see what the building looked like. We have a 1908 picture of the building, which was 2 years after it was constructed. So we will look at some of the design elements and features on the exterior of the building and talk a little bit about its history. And this is important because when this commission is tasked with evaluating a site or structure for potential local landmarking, we need to do our research. We need to look into the architectural history, of course. We need to look into the cultural, social, civic, educational, and economic significance of a particular site and what it means to the village of Tuckahoe. And for the 3 other sites that we've landmarked so far, and then also for this one, of course, we begin by reaching out to the Tuckahoe History Committee. And for this Village Hall nomination, we can thank particularly Lois Macri and Nick Zanzano, the village historian, for providing a ton of pictures. If anyone ever wants to travel back in time to Main Street School or the Assumption School, or even to the early 80s here at Village Hall, please consult them. They have some real gems. But they also have newspaper articles, clippings, documents that talk about the history of the building. We were also able to consult the Out of the Wilderness book that talks about the villages of Tuckahoe, Eastchester, and Tuckahoe, Bronxville, and also Eastchester. And there's a particular chapter on education in here, from which we got a ton on, or at least some, about when this building was Main Street School. So are we looking at the presentation? I don't know if it's coming up there. So while we think about some of the technical aspects here, we have some visual elements to discuss, particularly about the architecture. I can jump into the history of the building, Gary, if that's a good place for us to start. Let's do that while we wait for our pictures. Hopefully we get our pictures. Let's talk a little bit about the history of this building. Yeah? Okay. So let's leave technology behind in 2024 and travel to 1906. 1906 is when this building was constructed. So in 1906, we have Teddy Roosevelt as our president. He had been in office since 1901, so he was still in office in 1902 when Tuckahoe was incorporated. And in 1906, the village leaders came together and built this as Tuckahoe's public school. There's our presentation. Thank you so much. In 1906, they came together to build this building. So if you're wondering, so Tuckahoe's formed in 1902. The building comes along in 1906. Where are Tuckahoe children going to school? And it's a very good question. Because in the years leading up to the turn of the last century, there was quite a bit of shakeup in the town and local villages. And we know that in the 1800s, leading up until 1898, Tuckahoe and Bronxville were communities within Eastchester. There was no village of Bronxville officially, or no village of Tuckahoe officially. So on this side of town, which was the populated area of Tuckahoe, children went to school with the kids nearby in Bronxville. So children from Tuckahoe and Bronxville, at least up until we think like those years around the turn of the last century leading up to the incorporation of Bronxville in 1898, there was a school on Pondfield Road, a primary school that children attended. But there was some disagreement between Tuckahoe and Bronxville about public education for the little ones. Some more politics, if anyone is interested in this book that discusses that a bit more. But the decision was made to split educational responsibilities for the two communities. So that I'm led to believe that that school on Pondfield, which closed, it was later moved perhaps towards Craft Avenue, but we could look into that more perhaps in the future. But what happened to the Tuckahoe children? They started attending classes in a dwelling on Columbus. Just for a bit, then they were moved over to the Lyceum, which is another building I would love to learn more about. The Lyceum, which you hear told quite a bit in stories of Tuckahoe's past. They were there briefly. And then Tuckahoe constructed a 4-room building over on Jefferson. And the children attended classes there until 1906. So just there was a brief period of time, but nevertheless an important one for the kids who were shuffling around, because we'll see some pictures in this presentation, and maybe some of those children in the 1908 image were dealing with the scenario we just presented. 1906, the village says we need a bigger school, we need our own school, and they pick this location. So at that time, the population of Tuckahoe, in 1905 specifically, was 1,580, led to believe, individuals, right? So the number of children is lower than that. And for those children in this village, they built this building. And are we going to look at the exterior at some point?
Unfortunately.
Okay.
We just got grants to replace the whole room back there. So this is the old stuff that we can't get going.
Okie doke.
Sorry, Jen.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. We're back at the history. So our children are here in 1906. There was a decision made for this building upon its construction to have 13 classrooms. And initially, there was no gym, no gymnasium. But people stood up and said, we need a gym for our children. So they included a gym. So we had 13 classrooms and a gym. And the students who studied here were in the lower educational grades, and they would enter the building, which we have lovely photos of, but let's talk a little bit about the building that they would enter. Because visualize this building. We can, because we just walked through the doors. So everyone else visualize this building. Maybe in the YouTube we can insert some pop-ups here, but visualize this building. We have a main walkway coming off of Main Street that brings you to this building. And if you're looking at the center of the building, it lends itself to a main entrance. There is no main entrance there right now. And you have to choose. Do you go right to the police or left to enter Village Hall? When this building was constructed, there was a main door right there in the middle. And that door had a sign over it that said District Number 2, which is the school district that the Tuckahoe children attended. That's where likely the adults entered, because right now we have the police on the right and the village entrance on the left. They were separate entrances for boys and girls back when the school was constructed. So if we're looking at the building, we're seeing the main entrance there that's no longer there, the main door, and then our 2 doors on the side. If we look to the right and left, on the sides of this center, everything is symmetrical. And that was a design style, an intentional choice that was made for this building. It was it reflected some of the designs that were characteristic of the turn of the last century, yes. But it was also not just a rectangle. It was a building that had classic elements of ornamentation that were deliberately included on it. So let's talk about some of these additional classical-esque styles of ornamentation. So if we're starting at the bottom and we start looking up, we see that we have some big windows. They get bigger as the building goes up. In the center, they are arches. And on the right and left, they are more rectangular. So your eyes are drawn to the center there. The windows have a design element called a key above them, which is, someone made the decision to go above and beyond just a standard building. They're making this visually appealing from the exterior. When your eye goes up to the roof, we see our pediments. To the right and the left, we have the rectangular pyramid pediments, and in the center there is a arch. And these are, they have cornices underneath them. And these were all there, and these are still there now, these design elements. There were also some pilasters on the right and left of the center that were imitating columns. So we have some elements of classic design in there too, some of our Doric style architecture. And thanks so much to Ladislao for a lot of the architectural information that we have about this building. But if we can pause just for one more second on the windows, they are big windows, especially in the center. And that was an important design choice at that time, which suggests some of the higher ceilings for the building, which gives us a window into the decisions that were made by the people that were here for the children that would be educated in this school. And please jump in if anything I'm missing with some of the design elements here. There used to be, on the roof of the building, which is no longer there, a really cool cupola in the center. And that center door, which is long gone, also had a pediment there. So we can see what the building looked like then, thanks to some of the images, but also because many of these design elements are still reflected in the exterior of this building. So what happens in Tuckahoe after the school opens? Well, we fast forward from 1906, and the school is functioning as Tuckahoe's public primary school up until the late 50s. It closes in 1958. Now let's think a little bit about why before we talk about what happened next. But I mentioned the population of Tuckahoe about 1,500 when the school opened. In 1960, so which is 2 years after the school closes, the population of Tuckahoe is 6,423. So a huge population boom in Tuckahoe, which, I mean, we're not hovering that much more above that to this day, right? Considering that huge jump then and where we are today. So a lot of the foundations for the village that were helping Tuckahoe to become what it is today, it's all taking place in this time period. And then there's this huge population growth. The Cottle School is built, and it becomes Tuckahoe's school district for children in the Tuckahoe School District, which, whether you're zoned Eastchester, is a whole different story, which we will not get into now. But Tuckahoe, this school was replaced by the newer school. So what happened? In 1958, the Assumption Church was looking to open a parochial school, and they had the option of buying a building closer to where Assumption is over, that's Pleasant? 110 Pleasant Avenue at Assumption Church. But instead of buying a closer building and knocking it down and building something, they saw that this building was for sale. It went up for auction. They put in a bid. They were outbid by a real estate outfit in Eastchester. They upped their bid, and they eventually won in 1958, paying $110,000 for this building. So it became the Assumption School. The Assumption School kept the same exterior. Some changes were made, but for the most part, the same exterior. And they had they altered the classrooms a bit, but it remained a primary school for parochial students. During that time, the changes that were occurring in the village involved dwindling population attendance for the parochial school. So it was the Assumption School from 1960 when it opened until 1981 when it closed, and the village scooped up the building. And we know that before the village of Tuckahoe moved to here in 1982, they opened with a dedication in 1982. They were over in the Generoso Pope building, along with the police department and some of the other administrative offices. So everybody moves over here. There was one article that we had that said the move was done, what was it, 2 days? 2 days. They packed up and moved on over. And here they are in Village Hall. And the building was altered, of course. But from 1982 until now, there are, of course, many of the original design elements on the exterior, which is what we are focusing on today. That's a bit of the architectural tour. That is more descriptive than visual there. Is there anything anyone wanted to add? So as Tuckahoe's Village Hall, we have our architectural significance, right, reflected in the design elements characteristic of the earlier time period that have been maintained. But then we also look at this location for Tuckahoe. This is the seat of Tuckahoe's government. It is the hub of the community. When you put Tuckahoe, New York, into a GPS navigation system, it brings you between here and the corner there. But this is one of the central locations within Tuckahoe. And it was pointed out to someone that the elevation of this building is higher than some of the surrounding buildings. And it does loom over the village, part of that intentional, I think, design of it. Let's see, what else do we have?
No, you're right, Jenny, and it's a focal point. It's people reference on Main Street this building, and as is noted in the application, it's used by the school district for children to come to this courtroom, have mock trials. It's used as educational place that the schools use and use the government, and the judge comes in and the police department participates. So it really is an active, and not only an active courtroom. And I think we discussed this, and it's in the application as well, that downstate you tend to see dedicated courtrooms, but you don't see that all throughout the state. There's a lot of makeshift courtrooms. This looks like a courtroom. It operates. It's always a courtroom, and we use it obviously for other business, such as our meetings. But there's a lot to be said for this building, where it stands, the way it has not changed in so many years, and specifically the front of the building. Yeah.
Absolutely, and thank you for pointing out just how functional this building is, obviously, as a Tuckahoe government municipal building, and that is not taken lightly by this commission. We are well aware of the need to maintain this as a thriving, functioning building, and at the same time, continuing this tradition of landmarking this building. I mean, it's a landmark, right? It's an unofficial landmark, and our job is to look at options of making it an official landmark. And we were talking about a fun quote that we found in the Tuckahoe History Committee's archives when in 1981 it was known that Assumption was closing, and that there was the possibility, so what happens, right? So if the village hadn't come here, who knows what would have happened if someone else had come, or who knows? But at that time, we have a quote. Do you have it there?
It is hoped that the present hall will be designated as a historical landmark so that its architecture will remain basically unchanged no matter who should purchase it. And this goes back to, as you're referencing, 1981. So talk about having foresight.
It only took 40
It's almost
something
like
years.
they're telling us, how do we say no to that?
I think it's additional proof that this is and was, and hopefully as long as it can be, will remain a Tuckahoe landmark, unofficially and now officially. So with all of this information, which we hope was helpful to informing everyone about what we look at when we research the criteria for local landmarking, we would now like to list the 4 criteria that we concluded this building meets. And Greg, can I look at you? Do you have those printed out? Yes, if we could look. So there were 4 criteria. So if we could just read the criteria and then just the initial.
Just want to make sure that I'm in order here. Okay, criteria D. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm out of order here. 5. Here we go. Criteria.
I mean, any orders, okay.
She moved the papers around on purpose. I'm sorry. Criteria A, possesses special character or aesthetic value as part of the cultural, architectural, social, or economic history of the village.
I think we read that first little bit.
You want me to? Right. Tuckahoe Village Hall, which was originally constructed as Tuckahoe's Main Street Public School and later served as the Assumption Church, has played an essential and lasting role in the cultural, educational, and civic history of the Tuckahoe for close to 120 years. And that's the Assumption School, not the...
Yes.
Thank you. Tuckahoe Village Hall is architecturally and historically significant as the oldest standing public building in Tuckahoe. The building possesses exterior design elements and construction that reflect the turn of the last century style, chosen to represent the values and needs of the community in which it was constructed. Criteria B is identified with persons or events significant in local, state, or national history. And in that regard, Tuckahoe Village is home to diverse populations as it has been throughout its history. This is reflected in its student and civic bodies who have been active participants at 65 Main Street since 4 years after the founding of Tuckahoe as a village in 1902. Members of the Tuckahoe community have been educated at, have held representative positions with, or have expressed and resolved grievances at the same building at 65 Main Street that still stands today. Number 7, page 7, here we go. Criteria D embodies the distinguishing characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction or design style, or is a valuable example of the use of indigenous materials or craftsmanship. And to that end, the architectural style of Tuckahoe Village Hall reflects the turn of 19th century time period when it was constructed. The incorporation of large ceilings and windows are representative of an intentional direction that some educational institutions of that era were committed to. The functional layout and construction also displays elements of exterior ornamentation. And criteria F, represents an established and familiar visual feature of the community by virtue of its unique location or singular physical characteristic. The structure at 65 Main Street that has served as 2 different primary schools and is now the seat of Tuckahoe's village government and administrative affairs has been a hub for the educational and civic development during the growth and evolution of Tuckahoe for close to 120 years.
Super, thank you.
You're welcome.
So those were the criteria that we believe the site at 65 Main Street meets in order to qualify it for consideration as a Tuckahoe local landmark. And there are there's tons more information in the nomination, which was delivered to Tuckahoe's building department and received earlier today. So we can get into some of those additional details, perhaps using some visuals at a future meeting. So it sounds like we have the option to wait.
So I think what we should do, Madam Chair, is just open the public meeting next time. There's no one here in the room, so hopefully we can do the slideshow next. I'll make sure we get it working, and then we can open the public meeting at that point. So it'd be nice if people come out who have information on the building and come out and share that with us.
Okay.
I do have one question, though. Yes. I had the amazing opportunity to look at the slideshow as you were speaking. And the entrance on this side of the building, above the door it said girls.
Yes.
And then on the other side where the police department entrance is, it says boys. Why would they have the two separate signs there?
That was the designation of the entrance for those genders, which we found there were some schools, especially in the city, that still have those signs up to this day. Exactly when they stopped doing that is a good question, but we see some, even up farther north in Westchester, there are some historic schoolhouses, and if they have more than one entrance, they were designated by gender.
I went to parochial school, and we had two separate entrances. Yeah. And, I remember by the time we hit the 8th grade, we could see the girls' class from the 8th grade girls across the hall, across the alleyway. So it was always...
So the classes
Yes.
are separated also?
Oh, yeah. Well, I went to parochial school, so yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get this running, so...
Aren't those pictures cool, though? The boys and girls entrances, and then there are some pictures from the 20s. Yes. And then you can see the trolley lines that ran in front of the building. You can see before the Masonic Temple was built in 22, you can see the rock, the stone, the earth that jutted out of the ground. You could see, so the back of the building, we don't talk a ton about the back of the building because there are some sheds that are there which are not included in the nomination as auxiliary buildings, but nevertheless they restrict the view a bit from the back, so you don't have the the ability to see as much as you do from the front. But in some of those old pictures, when you look towards the back, so looking at the building but seeing a bit behind it, Underhill is way up there. I mean, at that point it was like a wall of earth behind the building. Now, less so than it is now, where Underhill comes down and it's flat and you can get in and out of the parking lot. But before that was done, you had a wall of earth behind the building too. So it kind of had this little, fortress element. The wall out front of the building was a little bit different. But yeah, you're right. We can get into all of those pictures later, and we have some of the students too. Some pictures of the students going back to at least 1908.
I'd say when you look at the back of the building versus the front of the building, night and day.
Yep.
But I'm sure, obviously, there was reasons for that. So.
Yep. And the pictures are cool because they show some changing demographics in Tuckahoe, which we get into in the nomination, because in this population boom that Tuckahoe experienced in the early decades of the 20th century, there were large numbers of individuals coming from the American South as well as Europe, and especially Italy and Ireland. And we have some stats on what those numbers look like, and were reflected in the school populations and the roots of the village that we are today. So if everyone's in agreement, it looks like we are, we can wait until the next meeting to open up the public meeting. But the nomination has been submitted, so this is definitely an ongoing conversation. As far as the National Register presentation, we could probably wait for that one too.
Yeah, I think once we're up and running, then you could have the slideshow also.
Okay.
So I think we should probably wait on that.
Okay, let me give you a teaser for that one, though, because these things are so heavy, and I did carry all of them with me tonight. But this book is called Picturing Our Past, National Register Sites in Westchester County. This huge, gorgeous coffee table book has tons of National Register sites just in Westchester County. Now, this book is from 2003. Okay, 2003. But here's my question. Today, Tuckahoe has about 320. I'm sorry, Tuckahoe. Westchester has about 320 National Register sites. That includes some that have been added to the National Register since this book was published. Out of those, how many are in Tuckahoe? Now you can say, Jenny, that's not fair. This is from 2003. We know something happened, ish, in the ish being the key word here. Something happened after 2003, and I'd say, okay, all right, what are you thinking? So in 2005, the Marble Schoolhouse was included, but that's Eastchester, so it's not that. Okay, fast forward a little bit. 2010 was the year that the Tuckahoe High School was made a National Register listing. But why are there no Tuckahoe National Register of Historic Place listings? Because Tuckahoe High School is technically in 10709, which is Eastchester. So out of these 320 sites, Tuckahoe is not represented with the 10707. But there's absolutely no reason why there shouldn't and couldn't be National Register sites from Tuckahoe. And I think that this commission has been doing a great job in illustrating the amazing history, along with our history committee, that this village has. So it's not for lack of criteria qualification. So I think that's where we have the opportunity to come in and help, because I think that the National Register listings give some buildings a little bit of prestige. They help with planning at the local level. And in our local landmark legislation for Tuckahoe, this commission has the opportunity to assist local landmarks with National Register applications. And I think that we can start having serious conversations about what that looks like. And that's an open invitation to anyone with ideas about moving forward with National Register listings to come to us with how we can help. We have a slideshow that gives some more details on what some of those benefits are. But it is certainly an open opportunity that I think we are committed to doing what we can to help. And we'll see in the next version of this book. Well, there's some cool info on Tuckahoe quarries, but not any of those sites that we discussed. So that could be fun. And I think it falls under our purview. So we'll to be continued with that one as well.
I think that's great, Jenny, and to have people come into the conversation, because there are still so many people that have maybe even direct knowledge. I mean, I know, unfortunately, my mother passed away, but she did attend this school, the Main Street School, as did my grandmother and my great-grandmother attended this school. So
cool. Yes, thank you. We hope people will come forward with additional pictures, sure, stories, and any ideas. Okay. So we will set our meeting soon. So we'll pick the date and post that soon for the next meeting? Okay. So I had all this stuff that I was carrying with me to the meeting, and I actually found a joke that I must have written. I must have written this joke down at some point and put it on a piece of paper and shoved it in my bag. But I don't even remember if I told it, because that's how bad my jokes are. You know, I don't even know if I told these jokes. Did I tell the one about the roof? The one about the roof? Did I tell the joke about the roof? I was over everybody's head. I must have told it. It was over everybody's head. No? Yeah?
that was very good,
Yeah.
Jenny.
It's true. I really did find that written down. Okay. Anything else? Any?
Oh, I think that was a good lead-in.
That's it.
Okay. So should we motion to close tonight's meeting?
I second that. Well, motion?
Aye.
All right. All in
Aye.
favor? Aye? Okay,
Aye.
great. Thank you very much. Good night.
Right.
Good night.